All right, so an interesting trade to talk about with Joe Schobert is no longer a Jacksonville Jaguar. They gave him a bunch of money to get him for a season, end up trading him for, it's a late round pick. That's all we know at this point. So my guess is probably a 6th or a 7th round pick, given that Pittsburgh does not have a 5th round pick. And it's an interesting decision for Jacksonville to make because I think the initial thought process is, wait, if you gave him so much money, why just give up on him so quickly? Well, a couple of things to note. First of all, the people in charge now are not the people who gave Schobert a bunch of money. There's a new head coach, a new general manager, so that has nothing to do, you can't think that way because you have to just come in and say, okay, this is what our team is. How do we make it better? Even if you made a move a year ago, you didn't make that move. So first of all, why such little value? Why getting basically nothing for a guy like Schobert, where you're basically just giving up on him? Well, there's, I would say, two main reasons. One, it appears as though Damian Wilson has won the job, which basically means Schobert is now a rotational player, and you just can't really justify paying that much money for a rotational player, especially when they're going to a 3-4, so you only have, two linebackers on the field, whereas if it's a 4-3, then typically you'll have, by linebacker, I mean off-ball linebacker, then typically you'll at least sometimes have 3 linebackers on the field. Very rarely in a 3-4 will you have 3 off-ball linebackers on the field. Again, no team only plays 3-4 or 4-3. Every team runs a mixture here and there, but given the primary 3-4, there's less value there in Schobert. And the main reason why they wanted to trade him is just the financial thing. So if they were to keep him, it's an average of $12.1 million for the next 4 years. It's a little bit backloaded, but that's what the average would be. If they cut him, they would only owe him $9.4 million. So not a lot of guaranteed money there. It wouldn't be horrible dead cap. This is after June 1st. It would have been more if it was pre-June 1st. And then if they trade him, they only have to pay $2.4 million. The rest is put on to Pittsburgh, and they have to, pay the bill at that point. So you're basically getting out of the contract completely. So only $2.4 million in dead cap for one season, in a season that the Jaguars are rebuilding. I think they might have playoff aspirations, but not massive ones. And personally, I think this is just a pure rebuilding year. So to me, I think that it makes sense from that. Logically, if you are going to get rid of him, trading him makes sense. And so for Pittsburgh, they have more leverage saying, you can't really, it's a lot worse if you cut him than you trade him. So, there's less negotiating power with that. But then there comes, the question of, well, why are you trading him in the first place? Sure, if you're going to trade him, okay, getting rid of him, sure, makes sense. If you do want to move on from him, I get that. But how did he lose the starting job to a guy who's primarily been a journeyman through most of his career? Well, a couple of things, and I think it's interesting. There's some numbers to talk about. For one thing, last year, the biggest jump you'll see is that he gave up 616 passing yards, and this is according to Pro Football Focus's numbers, and he had, 1,110 snaps. So he played a ton last year for Jacksonville. So that's an issue for Jacksonville, is you're just going to have to replace the snaps. So 616 yards is what he gave up last year in 1,110 snaps. If you take what his career average would be per 1,110 snaps before last season, it was just 414.4 yards. So over 200-yard jump last year. How much of that was just the team around him wasn't very good? An element of it. Again, it's not like he's always played for great defenses in Cleveland, right? But still, the Jacksonville defense was really bad last year, so that was a big aspect for sure. I think you can also look at some other numbers. For example, the reception percentage that he gave up was 78.9, which is the second highest of his career. The first highest was just his rookie season, so that was a jump for sure. And his passer rating, though, actually a little bit down from his career average. Passer rating against, of course, he was never quarterback, was 99.3, whereas his career average is 102.5. So a little bit down there, and the big reason is the interceptions. He had 3 picks last year, 4 the year before. So he's gotten those interceptions, and that's maybe what he can bring to Pittsburgh. I get the logic for Jacksonville of moving on from him. I don't think he's a superstar. I think he is someone that probably is a bit overpaid, but I do think that he's still a valuable player as well. I think you can say both. And for a rebuilding team, it probably makes sense to move off of him. For a competing team, it probably makes sense to get him. So people love to say this trade helps both sides. I'm not entirely sure. I think I can come up with a clear winner. I'll say that at the end of the video, but I do understand the logic from both sides, and I would say it probably does help both sides, but I think it helps one side a little bit more. So let's get into the film now. A lot of talk about the general aspect of it, which makes sense. It's an interesting move, but yeah, let's get into the film. All right, so let's start off with this play, and right off the bat, this is going to be a bit confusing. I'm not exactly sure what Jacksonville is doing, unless I'm just missing something. This appears to be man coverage. My first read of this play, okay, cover one man, but Joe Schobert is currently lined up on a wide receiver, and not just any wide receiver, but Adam Thielen. So Thielen is in the slot right here, and maybe Jacksonville is just saying, okay, you go with the guy that you're currently lined up with. So, Schobert was going to cover the number 3 receiver regardless on this side, but I don't know why you would do that. I don't get why you wouldn't just put a corner in front of him. So not exactly sure the logic here. But regardless, you now have Schobert with a one-on-one matchup against Thielen. But watch how Schobert, once his play starts, is patient, and he's going to do an okay job at hanging with Thielen. It wasn't the craziest, route you have to cover, but still, it's a great wide receiver against a linebacker. There absolutely is a window right here where this throw could be made. But that's kind of how I would describe Schobert in his game as a whole, is especially with coverage, he's going to make things difficult on the opponent. He's not going to make things impossible on the opponent. This throw is a bit high, and the reality is it would have had to be a good throw for that to be a completion, and that's what Schobert is going to force you to do. He's going to force you into having to make a good throw. We can talk about this play for a second. I mentioned his turnovers. Well, let's talk about one. I think a lot of people talk about, with linebackers in particular, turnovers can be very fluky. They don't stay the same year in and year out, and that is true. Although Schobert has had good turnovers in back-to-back years, that doesn't necessarily guarantee it'll happen for a third straight year. But this is probably a good example of kind of the flukiness, but also the skill involved as well. So it's going to be a play action, and then you're going to have the linebackers, they move in on the play action. Once they realize it's play action, they'll probably go further deep because they want to make sure to get back into their position. And then you have the running back just sort of, sit underneath. He makes the catch. The linebackers hopefully will be turned around and won't even see what's going on, and you can gain some yards that way. It's a good play. Again, first play of the quarter, you're hopefully catching them off guard with a little bit of trickery when they probably expect something basic here. Also, in the white circle, that is Joe Schobert. He's going to be covering basically just past where Cook is going to be running. And right when this play starts, you notice that he does move in a little bit, and then there's this throw, and I'm not sure what happened with Dalvin Cook here. I guess he just, they weren't on the same page. So again, this is where the luck factor comes in, right? A lot of times on turnovers, it results in, for it to happen, the opposing offense has to make a mistake. That's just what has to happen, and it has to be in your area. At the same time, you do have to take advantage of it. Everyone every year is going to have some sort of opportunity like this, and the good players take advantage of those opportunities. Schobert was aware and made this play, and keep in mind, this was a play designed to trick him, so the fact that he was able to stay aware is impressive, and he gets the pick six as well. Again, not the highest degree of difficulty play, there was some luck involved, but still a good play and with a big result involved. Now, this is something that I was immediately excited when I saw this for the Pittsburgh Steelers. His blitzing ability. The Steelers like the blitz, and a lot of times they like the blitz just with their traditional 3-4, 5 guys are on the line and they just send all 5, which they can do, but they will have linebackers come, off-ball linebackers come in and blitz as well, and Schobert can do that very well. On this play, he's currently, at the line, but watch what he's going to do, and watch this kind of clever little move that I like when guys do this, and I think they should do it more often. Watch him kind of fake as though he's going back, but then runs forward and doesn't quite get the sack, but he does help disrupt things a little bit there. So again, rushing the passer is a team activity, and he was able to, be a team member on that play that resulted in a sack. So again, you see stuff like that. It can get you excited if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, where now he's going to a system that they like the blitz, so this should be fun and should actually have more value with Schobert than it would in Jacksonville. One more play, we can talk about some negatives with Schobert, and there are some. There really are. This is a good example of kind of his biggest negative, I would say, is sometimes he won't make some reads that aren't even bad, but you're just like, it would have been nice if you could have made that read. And again, he very much is a guy who you come in to complete your defense. You don't bring him in to take over a game or anything like that. He's a complimentary piece. He really is, but a solid one. Anyways, this is where things can go wrong. So it's going to be a handoff to Cook, who's currently in a jet sweep motion, and they're going to have a receiver run out to block Schobert. So this is a mismatch for Jacksonville in a positive way. However, watch Schobert and watch how he just never realizes this and kind of gets bumped out of the way a little bit. It wasn't even a massive, collision or anything, but that little bit of contact is all that really needed to happen. And if Schobert had noticed it, he could have gotten around and maybe gotten a better angle. Instead, he really isn't going to get into this play. He kind of ends up at the very end helping make the tackle, but really did not make the play too much. So, again, it's a small thing. This is a small example. You see this in both the running game and in coverage. There will be some times where he's capable of getting beat. He is. That's very fair to say, a very fair criticism, I would say. Listen, he might not be a perfect player. You can come up with some flaws, but is he a player you want on your team? Yeah, he is. I don't think Jacksonville got rid of him because they felt like he was actively not good. I actually think there's even a chance, I'm speculating that Wilson beat him out in training camp. It's possible they felt like, we don't really see a clear winner here, so we'll just get rid of the guy who's more expensive. I could easily see that having been the mindset as well, which there is some logic behind, I guess, because if you ended up not starting Schobert, well, now you're not going to get rid of that contract, so get rid of him now. That makes a lot more sense. So I get it. I understand it. I would say that this is a win for the Steelers. I think that the reality is you can work with the salary cap, you can, and the talent they're getting for the capital they're giving up is a massive win. You usually don't get a solid starting linebacker, which is what I would consider Schobert, for a late round pick. So might as well take that. And again, the NFL doesn't seem to value linebackers as much as maybe fans might. So that's probably an aspect. But if you do value linebackers, like, he's a solid player. And it's an interesting move with the Jaguars just as a whole because, it's tough. When you want to build a team, you have to go about it a certain way. It doesn't have to be one specific way, but you have to have a plan and you have to follow that plan. So one front office staff, which again, obviously there's going to be a lot of people that stay in there, but one front office staff might say, well, let's sign Schobert because we could get a good player now. The other front office staff might say, we don't need this contract. Let's get rid of him. So it's just two different ways to build a team. I don't view this as, well, why did you sign him then? Because they didn't. So I think it makes sense. And yeah, as a whole, I probably would say the winner of this trade is the Steelers. I think that the Jaguars, I just think they should have been able to get more. Yes, you're rebuilding, but the point of rebuilding is to get better players, right? Which I don't know how this helps them that much other than the cap space, which is, that's something that does matter. But I just feel like, it's the NFL. It's not the NHL where they have like a hard cap where you can't, fiddle around with the backloaded contracts and stuff the way you can in the NFL. So maybe they could have gotten more, but apparently not. So I'll say this is a win with Pittsburgh, and I still don't hate it from the Jacksonville Jaguars perspective. It still probably does help their team. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.